Our last session today is the state and federal regulations, and unfortunately, it's a lot of things you think you'd like to do, you really can't do because the state says that you can't. And the state does that through legislation, and it's important to understand what's going on in the State House. While we are impacted by the federal government, we're just as much, if not more, impacted by the state government, and we also typically have a little bit better voice to get something done through the state than we do to the federal. So it's important to understand what is going on in Columbus. And with us here today to give us those views is Ashley Brewster. Ashley is the Director of Communications for the Ohio Municipal League. She's been there for 2 years. Prior to that, she worked as a legislative aide in both the House and the Senate at the General Assembly. I think she's going to be able to provide you with a lot of good insight. So let's give Ashley a welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Brian, for that introduction. Another note on the PowerPoint presentation is, as I was going through my notes earlier today, I realized that I hadn't submitted the most recent version of the PowerPoint presentation, so that just means you have to hang on my every word. So I think that works out okay for me. Thank you for bearing with me. I know it's been a long day for you guys. I will make this as succinct as possible and send you guys home with information and maybe some ideas on how to engage your legislator at the state level. So we will go ahead and dive on in. It worked. I'd like to start off with some brief observations, sort of singing the praises of Ohio's municipalities. The population is divided, 78% urban, 22% rural, and 9 million of Ohio's roughly 11.5 million population reside in either a city or a village. Ohio's 11 largest municipalities are responsible for 90% of the state's GDP, and you'll notice that personal incomes there at the bottom of the slide tend to run higher in metropolitan areas. And it's not on the slide, but from my understanding in statistics that I've read before, 80% of Ohio's businesses have elected to locate in an Ohio municipality. So it's hard to overstate the importance of Ohio's municipalities. At OML, we like to refer to them as the economic engines of the state. So that's a brief overview of the role that municipalities play. Right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I understand is a hot topic in a lot of different city council discussions, and that is the changes made to the centralized collection of net profit business filings as a result of House Bill 49, which was passed last year. That's the 2-year state operating budget bill. Essentially, the change made in House Bill 49 allows businesses to opt in for 1 year to file their net profit business filings through the Ohio Business Gateway, also known as the OBG, instead of filing through their individual municipalities. The Ohio Department of Taxation would be the administrator of this tax should the business opt in to file through the OBG, and they would be responsible for the collection and then the distribution of those revenues back to the municipalities. Those distributions would be taking place twice a month, and before they would distribute those revenues back to the municipality, they would first be deducting a 0.5% fee for the pleasure of using the Ohio Business Gateway. In addition to the problems I think that you can already see that this might pose to cash flow or bookkeeping for municipalities, there's nothing in the law that dictates that the Ohio Department of Taxation has to remit any of the documents that would accompany a filing, which is going to make it difficult when municipalities need to review or audit or enforce the filings from a business for their net profit taxes. I think that when this issue is discussed in the media, people tend to think that the heartburn for municipalities that is that 0.5% fee. But when you talk with the local tax administrators, I co-chair our income tax committee with the Ohio Municipal League. It's more about these documents that the Department of Taxation is not responsible to remit back to the municipality. the news, the way this has been making itself into the news recently, as I'm sure that you've read, are the lawsuits that have been filed challenging the constitutionality of the centralized collection of net profits. And 2 separate lawsuits have been filed. The first was filed by over 130 municipalities across the state, and they used the legal firm Frost Brown Todd, which I'll be talking about a little bit later. That might be an important name for you to remember if you would like more information on this topic. And then shortly after, 22 RETA municipalities filed as well. And both of those cases were sent to the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas. Mid-February, and the notes don't reflect this, I apologize. Mid-February, Judge David Kane of the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas ruled against municipalities and in favor of the state for this challenge against centralized collection. And then last week, he announced that he was going to deny a request for a stay of that ruling while these municipalities appeal that ruling to the 10th District Court of Appeals. So currently, those municipalities, the 130 in that first lawsuit, have chosen to take it up to the next level, to the 10th District Court of Appeals. If you are looking for more information on the lawsuit, what the proceedings are going to look like, how the things are moving through the legal process, the Ohio Municipal League is definitely going to continue to update our members. We send out a bulletin at the end of every week on Friday. If you don't subscribe to that, please get a card. I think that's an important way to keep on top of what's happening on the state level. But if you're looking for more detailed information, OML is not involved in this lawsuit. We can't be. We don't have standing. So if you contact the legal offices of Frost Brown Todd, we've found that that's the best way for municipalities to get more information on the legal proceedings. To play devil's advocate and pretend that I'm not a lobbyist for the Ohio Municipal League, the businesses argued that it was the Ohio tax system with 600 separate municipalities with 600 different tax codes was by far the most complicated and therefore wasn't business friendly. So in order to streamline the process and make Ohio more business friendly, they would allow businesses to file in one single location through the Ohio Business Gateway. And I think it's worth noting that only 13% of businesses throughout the entire state actually have to file in more than one municipality. So we are talking a very small universe of businesses who are saying, this is a massive headache, we have to go through all these different tax codes, our tax preparers are pulling their hair out around April every year. Most businesses don't have to file in more than one municipality. You can go to the Ohio State Legislature's website, and if you go to the bill number and you click on votes, you're going to be able to get a list of everybody who voted. Keep in mind, they voted on House Bill 49, which is the state operating budget, and it has hundreds of amendments put into it every single year. And so you vote on the whole piece of legislation. This was one very small part of a massive piece of legislation that was voted on. So it's not necessarily reflective on who voted for this specific amendment because those votes were cast for the entire 2-year state operating budget bill. Another important issue for municipal income tax is the exemption of SERPs, Supplemental Executive Retirement Accounts, from municipal taxation. These are what are called top hat retirement accounts, and essentially executives who want to be paid after they retire through the SERP plan don't want to be taxed on it at the municipal level, even though it is taxed on the state and federal level. So currently there is legislation being discussed that would exempt these top hat retirement accounts from municipal taxation and municipal taxation only. Right now there are interested party meetings to discuss the language, and the two big problems that we have with the language thus far, besides the language as a whole, is the fact that the language as it is written covers all non-qualified deferred compensation plans. And it is retroactive back to 2016, which for some municipalities like Dublin, for example, is millions of dollars each year that were taxable at the time and have not been budgeted to be sent back to the state because it's already been spent. So we're very grateful that the legislators who are interested in putting this into a bill and then getting it passed before the end of the year, they've actually invited us to the table to have discussions on this language. And while we can never be supportive of legislation like this, we are grateful. And it says here that the meeting was yesterday, but it's actually today. So I need to call my people and find out how that went. So that's another really big municipal income tax legislation happening currently. This is another really big issue. The small cell wireless infrastructure deployment throughout a municipality's right-of-way, which ties in nicely to the discussion we just heard. Some of you may recall last year Senate Bill 331 was passed, and an amendment added to the bill allowed telecom industries essentially carte blanche control over how they would deploy small cell infrastructure throughout a municipal right-of-way. Sometimes this infrastructure can be the size of a refrigerator on a lawn or on a pole. Obviously, that gave municipalities a lot of heartburn, and several of them actually challenged it in court, and multiple judges ruled that it was unconstitutional because of the Ohio Constitution's single subject law, which says you can't stick an amendment into a bill if it has nothing to do with the content of the bill. And Senate Bill 331 was regulating puppy mills, which doesn't have a whole lot to do with 5G infrastructure. So telecom industries and municipal leaders and representatives from municipal coalitions came to the table in these month-long discussions, conference calls lasting 4 hours or more, and they came to essentially a compromise where both parties are equally unhappy, which many will tell you is the mark of good legislation. So essentially, this governs the deployment of small cell wireless infrastructure in the municipal right-of-way while giving municipalities some control and grants the telecom industry some level of uniformity. And that's being currently heard in the Senate, which is the second chamber to hear the bill, and leadership in both the House and the Senate are eager to get this bill passed as soon as possible. I want to touch on a couple of other bills we're taking a look at. This one has got a lot of people fired up, and you'll be able to see why in a moment. House Bill 410 deals with red light traffic cameras, and you'll think, I thought the Supreme Court already ruled on this issue. You would be right, but that doesn't mean that this issue isn't hotly contested still on the state level. What this bill does is A, any traffic law civil action can only be heard in municipal and county courts, no longer in mayor's courts. B, it would make the municipality responsible for all the court fees. And then C, it would deduct this is the kicker, it would deduct the revenues earned from citations given from red light traffic cameras from a municipality's local government fund revenues. So whatever you would earn in citations given through red light traffic cameras would be automatically deducted by the auditor's office from your local government funds. So obviously the Ohio Municipal League offered strongly written opponent testimony, essentially citing the Supreme Court ruling that said municipalities have home rule right to use these red light traffic cameras to issue citations, and what this bill essentially does is punish them for utilizing the home rule right as agreed to by the Ohio Supreme Court. It had its third hearing. Well, it did have its third hearing here. This isn't the most update. It was a crazy event of legislative gymnastics where it was sent to the full House floor, then re-referred back to committee, amended to clarify that the bill's intent was not to abolish mayor's courts, even though it takes a large percentage of the caseload away from mayor's courts, and then it was voted out of committee again. And we haven't seen movement on the bill since then, but you can rest assured we are keeping a very close eye on it. The next bill has to do with sovereign immunity, specifically regarding first responders, House Bill 419. And essentially, the bill as it is currently written would eliminate sovereign immunity for first responders in the event that their vehicle crashes into a civilian vehicle, unless both their lights and sirens were activated at the time of the incident. So we were able to talk with the bill sponsor and explain to him why things like silent response would make it impossible for municipalities and emergency responders to be agreeable to this bill. He was willing to go back to the drawing board, so we're hoping to see language that's far more amenable introduced shortly in an amended version of the bill. And there hasn't been much movement on the bill since we spoke with Representative Haney. So we'll be keeping an eye on that closely and updating everyone accordingly in our legislative bulletins. I don't know a whole lot about the medical marijuana program. That was the next part of my slide, but I would like to take any questions about the medical marijuana program. Essentially, the main contention has to do with the number of applications that were granted for cultivation sites. So you'll see on the third bullet point down that there were 185 applicants for 24 cultivation spots. And these were hotly contested because people saw dollar signs. And now there is this whole litigation process concerning whether or not this process was fair. People have asked the Attorney General to stop the process fully, but he said this thing is in motion. By September 8th of this year, the program will be launched. Certain kinds of medical marijuana will be legal. Certain kinds of medical ailments will be eligible to purchase medical marijuana for treatment options. So there has been some contention around that issue, but the state has made it really clear that they're not going to slow down this train. It's left the station. So there haven't been many changes in regards to stopping or altering the program as it was put into law in the last General Assembly. I'll close with this very briefly. It's probably going to sound cliche, but it's not. Our greatest lobbying force is absolutely the local elected officials on the municipal level. There are a lot of voices on that base, and we've seen a lot of, from the OML side, we have seen so much change happen when mayors, when city managers, when elected officials, when local leaders contact their legislators when they are interested in an issue. During the budget process, I watched an amendment get shot down within 12 hours because mayors were calling offices. And it was almost like we didn't have to do anything, which is really amazing. So I want to encourage you while I'm here to please, if you haven't already, contact your legislator, go to Columbus, get coffee with them, maybe where they're in the district, establish a relationship with them, establish a relationship with their staff. I was staff in a Senate and a House of Representatives office for a lot of years. We get a lot more, we do a lot of work. It's really good to have their ear when you're trying to get issues, when you're trying to work on different issues. So establishing that relationship, continuing that dialogue, and then reaching out to them when you're fired up about an issue, or when you're concerned about an issue, or when you see something that you like that's not a preemption, that you would hope the legislature actually passes, that is invaluable to what the Ohio Municipal League is trying to do. And as Director of Communications, I love to help people draft testimony. I'm fine with meeting you and walking you to a hearing room if you're interested in giving testimony in person. Absolutely contact me if I can be of any assistance, if you're interested in weighing in on any piece of legislation. But you guys are an invaluable resource, and you have the legislature's ear more than you realize. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk with you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.